Just go. This is Prime News on S3 coming to you live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg on Youth Day. Let's have a look at the day's top stories.
Those doors that have been opened do lead to skills, to employment, to enterprise ownership, and to dignity.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has acknowledged that young people face the brunt of poverty, inequality and crime. An investigation is underway into the crash that claimed the lives of 8 people on the N4 toll road near Ngodwana in Mpumalanga. And condolences are still pouring in following the passing of South African jazz icon and one of the country's most celebrated musicians and cultural ambassadors, Abdullah Ibrahim. Good evening and thank you so much for joining us tonight for Prime News on S3 for the next 30 minutes. I'm Gustav Freulen. President Cyril Ramaphosa has acknowledged that young people face the brunt of poverty, inequality and crime. He led the official Youth Day commemorations in Soweto with his year's event focused today on resetting government's commitment to improving the lives of the youth.
President Cyril Ramaphosa has called on the youth to look at opportunities in the country's 1 trillion rands infrastructure investment. This investment will create apprenticeships and artisan development, skills transfer and entrepreneurship development for young people, according to the president.
The youth unemployment rate stands at 46%. Which is totally unacceptable.
Illegal immigration is a hot potato in the country and worldwide. The head of state has admitted that illegal immigration outcries is legitimate and must not be dismissed as xenophobic.
There are some who blame the problems of unemployment and crime and poor service delivery on foreign nationals, even as we recognize the challenge of illegal immigration, of having undocumented migrants in our country, which we are taking decisive action to address. Our problems are in the main our own problems.
The youth is also demanding a skills audit, vacant funded posts in government of directors and deputy director generals to be advertised for the appointment of young people. Samke Lamasego, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Years on, South Africa reflects on the significance of the students who took to the streets of Soweto in 1976 in protest against the apartheid government's decision to enforce Afrikaans as a medium of instruction in schools. What began as a peaceful demonstration quickly turned into one of the most pivotal moments in the country's history, when police responded with violence, resulting in the deaths and injuries of hundreds of young people. Now, on this journey, we look back on what the youth of today can learn from the day and also look at critical challenges facing the youth of today. Bright Hlongwane is a youth development advocate. He joins us in studio tonight to talk about this. And thank you so much for joining us here at Prime News on S3 to talk about Youth Day. And let's start with one of the biggest issues in South Africa, very characteristic of South Africa at this point, is the inequality and the massive youth unemployment figures. To be young in South Africa today is not easy, always, mostly thanks to that. So what can you say to young people today who are caught up in exactly that, struggling to find a job?
Good evening, Gustav, and the viewers at home. Thank you very much for hosting me. What I can say to my peers who are at home struggling to find a job, others are even commemorating 10 years without finding a job, and others have said that looking for a job is now a job itself. They must not ever give up. Unfortunately, we are dealing with a system here that unfortunately doesn't have any opportunity for new entrants, because we have people who are refusing to go on retirement, now holding the system. So it's very difficult for the system to get new entrants when the inherent people who are now in the system are refusing to leave the system.
Yeah, that's one of the issues that you have to deal with. There are many debates on how to create jobs. Government will, of course, tell you that growth will make that happen and that their role is to create this climate. When you look at the reality on the ground in South Africa today, because of that figure, and if you're a young person in South Africa, where do you look for the solution? Do you see a more direct or more indirect role for the state in this?
So I think the state has the capacity to create the enabling environment, because the primary duty of the government is to create an enabling environment for business to thrive. And the biggest employer being the state, the second biggest is the private sector. So without the conducive environment for the private sector to thrive, jobs will not be created. And going back to my first point, saying we have people who are refusing to leave the system, thus creating that backlog of the system absorbing new entrants. And currently the biggest hot potato is entrepreneurship. We are trying to find ways to ensure that those young people who have taken it upon themselves to create jobs rather than to look for jobs are given the adequate support and resources to take their businesses to the next levels.
That is one of the things that I wanted to ask you about how young people can look into themselves for the solution to these problems in the country. And you can think about something like an entrepreneurial spirit, because that comes from within. But can you propose a way of thinking and approaching this issue when the situation around you is not that conducive necessarily?
Funny enough, these are the very same sentiments I was sharing in an advisory board meeting of a higher institution of learning last week, that unfortunately not everyone can be an entrepreneur, and those who are entrepreneurs now need to be given the adequate support and resources. As much as we can try and say we are going to teach entrepreneurship from primary school all the way to tertiary level education, but we need to know that entrepreneurs are born, others are made, but naturally we need to find a way to have a solution for those who are already in the entrepreneurship space, because currently we are solely reliant on the National Youth Development Agency for all the 22 million young people in the country, and the NYDA is given $500 million in a budget by the government, and that $500 million, 40 if not 45% of it goes to salaries, now leaving young people with a very small pie to share. So we are looking at requesting that the head of state, His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa, in his capacity as the leader of government, to try and find ways to mobilize the private sector, because the youth unemployment is an elephant that is unfortunately in everyone's room. So we need to find a way to bring the private sector to party.
Well, talking about the elephant in the room, so if we go back to the commemoration today, 50 years now of Youth Day, of the Soweto uprising, what can today's young people learn from the youth of 1976 in terms of their activism, their determinism, in terms of taking a stance? It is a very different country today than it was 50 years ago.
I think just to be blunt, we need to stop being keyboard warriors or keyboard activists. We are solely reliant on being activists only on social media. The youth of 76 took it upon themselves to challenge a very violent and very destructive government that used live ammunition on young people. So unfortunately, we are no longer in that scenario. We are now in a democratically elected government, meaning we are the ones who are able to cast a vote to say, this is the government we want, this is the government of the day. But in a nutshell, what we can learn, particularly from the youth of 76, is that resilience, that oozing spirit of country duty, because it was no longer what they can do for South Africa, but what South African can do for them.
And they didn't have social media. They had to face it.
They had to face a live bullet, live, not on social media.
Yeah. On that point, what about young people's participation in the democracy itself, elections, and in terms of getting young people to be represented in these legislatures and councils and so on?
On the President's speech, I think I did hear that there was a plan, we are a country with a lot of plans, to include young people in strategic positions, and which is a key requirement. And I'm a strong believer of ensuring that young people are represented at the decision-making table. I think the primary rule or a role young people need to play now going forward, because we are fast approaching local government elections, is not to say, even if I vote, even if I don't vote, nothing's going to change. Your vote matters. Go out there and make your voice heard.
Well, thank you very much for joining us this evening. That was the Youth Development Advocate, Bright Hlongwane. We continue with today's stories, and EFF leader Julius Malema says that land should be returned to what he called its rightful owners. While reflecting on 50 years since the 1976 Soweto uprising, the party leader spoke on the matters of the president, xenophobia and the upcoming local government elections.
The 1913 law that was passed, which took land from our people, was passed in Pretoria. That's why we need to go to Pretoria to change that law and pass the new law in Pretoria. And that law must return the land into the hands of the people of South Africa. Fighters, the Bantu Act, Bantu Education Act was passed in Pretoria, and the only way to do away with Bantu education and the Bantu Act and introduce Bella Act, we must come to Pretoria and set away with Bantu education and replace Bantu education with people's education for people's power, and education that will make a black child to be confident of being himself, that will make a black child not to be scared of their peers, that will make a black child to know that I am black and I am beautiful. There is nothing black and inferior.
Right, now news coming through is that scores of people were injured in what appears to be an unsafe crowd incident at the Union Buildings where the EFF commemorated June 16th. Reports are that they were queuing for food and then they became impatient. Meanwhile, MK party leader Jacob Zuma says South Africans should rise up and claim their land back. Zuma was addressing the party's Youth Day celebrations in Ermelo in Mpumalanga.
Abelungu bayithwele ngamasaka asahluleka ukuthatha izwe lethu, asilithathe manje singancengi umuntu, sithathe izwe lobaba mkhulu ngoba sibaningi. Abanye abantu baye bangayi nokuvota, hayi mina nginje ukuvota, ngiyazi lento.
When we come back, the DA has urged young South Africans to emulate the 1976 generation by actively participating in democracy and using their voting power to bring about change. Details on that coming up after the break. Welcome back to Prime News. The DA's federal leader, Jordan Hill-Lewis, has urged young South Africans to emulate the 1976 generation by actively participating in democracy and using their voting power to bring about change. Hill-Lewis was speaking at a Youth Day rally in KwaZulu-Natal.
And today, on Youth Day, we gather with one simple message. The way that we will guarantee change in our country, the way that we will get South Africa working for all, we will start that if we register to vote. We must register to vote and register to win. Register to build a South Africa that works for everyone. Now, friends, this is a very important Youth Day because it is the 50th anniversary. 50 years since those wonderful, brave, young South Africans rose up in Soweto in June of 1976.
Now, as the country commemorates June 16, families of the 18 June 1976 Alexandra massacre are calling for a review of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. They say the same bullets that killed young people who marched against the Bantu education system in Soweto also tore through Alexandra Township 2 days later, killing more than 35 young people who marched against the same cause.
On June 18, 1976, 2 days after the Soweto uprising began, students in Alexandra Township took to the streets with the same demands. The Soweto uprising started on June 16 when thousands of students marched against Afrikaans as the medium of instruction and the Bantu education system. But after police killed then 12-year-old Hector Peterson and others, protests spread across the country.
It's 50 years now where our people have lost their lives, and we've never even been mentioned by the president in the State of the Nation that we remember the people of Alex who lost their lives in 1976.
Reports indicate that over 35 young people were shot and killed in Alexandra on that day.
I lost my brother. And losing my brother, it was like the end of the world to me.
More than 10 families called us here. They all say that apart from feeling forgotten, the little recognition given by government has done more harm than good.
When this wall was, constructed, families like our family, we were not consulted. So this aspect of negligence that I'm talking about, you can also pick it up from all these years, until now, nothing has been done. Whereas in other townships, we see things happening. Sharpeville massacre, Soweto massacre. With Alexander, nothing has been, spoken about.
What is the TRC saying, ma'am?
TRC? It once came here in Alexander, and they didn't invite us.
The work of the TRC Cases Inquiry is exclusively to look at what happened to the cases that were referred by the TRC, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, to the police for investigation or to the NPA for further prosecution. What happened to those cases? And so we need to understand that.
When we asked if the terms of reference couldn't be revised for the families who allege their cases were never registered, the Commission said only the President has the authority to do so. The families now say they will take their fight to the presidency. They want the TRC brought back to Alexandra. Nomvuyo Ntanjana, SABC News, Johannesburg.
An investigation is underway into the crash that claimed the lives of 8 people on the N4 toll road near Ngodwana in Mpumalanga. 8 people were killed after a minibus taxi collided head-on with an articulated truck in the early hours of the morning. All the deceased were occupants of the taxi, which was allegedly travelling from Mozambique to Johannesburg in Gauteng.
The driver of the truck, along with his passenger, escaped with minor injuries. The deceased have since been taken to the state mortuary in Belfast so that the next of kin can be notified to enable them to identify the remains of their loved ones. We once more call on motorists to always rest sufficiently when they travel long distances, because this is a head-on collision.
After the break, tributes are pouring in globally for the jazz icon Abdullah Ibrahim, whose music transcended boundaries and served as a powerful voice against apartheid. More on the story when we return. Welcome back. Tributes are pouring in globally for the jazz icon Abdullah Ibrahim, whose music transcended boundaries and served as a powerful voice against apartheid. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa lauded Ibrahim's profound contribution, stating that his creations honoured the South Africa that shaped his political commitment and musical brilliance.
This is a loss to the music world, in a sense. His contributions have been, I think, phenomenal. As I said to you, I didn't follow Dollar Brand really, but strangely enough, he came out of exile, I think, in 1994. My wife and I, girlfriend then, we happened to be walking through London, through Trafalgar Square, and we heard the music in 1989. And looking through the shop window, my word, there was Dollar Brand playing a grand piano.
I guess a theme song of my youth, Manenberg. You know, it's not just my youth, it's a theme song of the youth of many people who grew up in Cape Town, was Manenberg by Abdullah Ibrahim. And Basil could see at the time. So maybe we must, when we take a moment to remember Abdullah Ibrahim, we also have to remember Basil could see.
When I was a child, he lived around the corner from us, and I remember that he was really a great musician, and we always admired him. And he was someone that we thought we wanted to be like when we grew up.
Let's now turn to the weather desk to see what we can expect as everyone is heading back to work tomorrow. John is joining us with the details.
A very good evening to you. Let's take a look at all your weather details. The middle of the week, Wednesday night, brings with it clear conditions for the Western Cape, but some cloud cover along the southern parts of that province. Isolated showers in the Northern Cape, stretching in towards the Eastern Cape and onto that eastern coastline. All the while we're seeing isolated showers in the forecast for KwaZulu-Natal coastline, northwards into the Eastern Escarpment, and Johannesburg expecting to receive some cloud cover overnight. Now ahead towards tomorrow, in the middle of the week, brings with it partly cloudy conditions for the Northwest Province and Gauteng, some isolated showers for the eastern parts of South Africa southwards towards Durban, and clearing conditions are expected in the west with clear skies in Cape Town tomorrow, but still some isolated showers due to a cut-off low in parts of the Northern Cape and southern areas of Namibia. Let's take a look now at your temperatures. Johannesburg drops down to about 7 degrees overnight and warms up on Wednesday to a maximum of 18, whilst in the northern parts of the country you can expect slightly warmer temperatures. 25 for Toyondo, 11 degrees overnight, and southwards in towards Mpumalanga we're expecting a high of 26 in Skukuza, that's through the north, Umlo up to 17 after dropping to 7 degrees this evening. Now on the KwaZulu-Natal coastline, expect low 20s for the coastal cities, Durban at 23, Pietermaritzburg up to 21. Some showers are expected in this province, and the same as for the Eastern Cape overnight, but in towards tomorrow clearing conditions are expected. Gqeberha 14 overnight up to 20 degrees tomorrow, and in the north of the province expect similar temperatures. Western Cape tomorrow, Hermanus up to 19, Cape Town 18, a sunny day expected, whilst in the east of the province some light cloud cover for Oudtshoorn at just 19 degrees. In the Northern Cape, Appington up to 24, some showers expected through the north of the province. The central parts of the country expecting some light cloud cover. In Bloemfontein, 5 degrees overnight, 19 the maximum tomorrow. And lastly, as we zoom in towards the northwest province, expect a maximum of 20 degrees for both Lichtenburg and Mahikeng. Mahikeng dropping to 8 overnight. That's it from me. Have a great evening.
And that's Prime News for Youth Day. Thank you for joining us, and enjoy what is left of the public holiday in the company of S3. We'll be back tomorrow once again here at 6 o'clock. From myself and the rest of the team, good night.